The moral argument for God's existence can be expressed as a syllogism. Premise one is that God must exist if objective moral values and duties exist. This premise is rooted in the idea that objective moral values, that is, what is right or wrong, regardless of human opinion, requires a transcendent foundation. Premise number two is that objective moral values and duties do exist. Many people across cultures and history recognize that certain moral truths, such as murder is wrong, are objectively true and not merely opinions. Therefore, the conclusion is that God exists. Since objective morality exists, there must be a transcendent source which we identify as God. Now, I want to make it clear what the argument for God through morality is not saying. The argument does not say that people who are atheists cannot have a good moral compass. It doesn't mean that a person who does not believe in God is less moral than somebody who does. So it has nothing to do with what the individual person does or how that relates to his belief. Instead, it is an argument for the existence of God based on the fact that we seem to have within our culture values which are identified as by everybody as being true. So this is not an argument that you must have or believe in God in order to be moral. The very core of the argument simply says that the fact that we look around and recognize that there are values that we all believe to be true. We should always have justice. It's wrong to kill. It's wrong to hurt innocent people. We all recognize those things as true. If there was not a divine lawmaker, then our values would change in culture and over history. Other people have explored the idea that there is a morality that seems to indicate that God exists, and some have come up with slightly different takes on this. Immanuel Kant felt that there was a categorical imperative that was indeed divinely inspired, but it produced a sense within people of how they ought to behave. And he reasoned that justice, ultimate accountability, is only possible if there's a moral God undergirding all of that. Rousseau believed that there was potentially a social contract that people within society devised, and that there was a innate sense of goodness or compassion in all people. So while he acknowledged that morality benefited from a foundation that is a divine purpose, he rather saw the moral laws as having arisen through a social contract. John Stuart Mill was a utilitarianist, that is, he believed that we should seek what gives the maximum joy or pleasure to the greatest number of people. But he did acknowledge that without some transcendent undergirding, our developed moral systems might not provide us with justice. McIntyre, looking at society and the dissolution of a lot of common moral principles, noted that the lack of religious belief caused ethical confusion, and he argued for a unified moral framework which is historically grounded in faith. Locke asserted that natural rights like life, liberty, and property are grounded in God's moral law, and he warned that without belief in objective moral laws from God, moral standards risk becoming arbitrary, endangering individual rights and social justice. So essentially, what the argument says is that morality is an indication of a transcendent God, because when we look around us, we see that there are universal values that most people hold, and that these universal moral laws seem to have a foundation which is based in a transcendent source, and we would identify that transcendent source as God. So the argument therefore not only supports belief in God, but also shows that the God of classical theism is perfectly good and just, and is the best explanation for the moral order that we experience. Morality points us to God.